Greetings, citizens, and welcome to another edition of Flashpoint, a regular television program of issues and ideas. Flashpoint is brought to you by the Lawrence Debate Union, which, as you may or may not know, like the people at this table know, is a co-curricular activity at the University of Vermont that trains University of Vermont students in the arts and skills of debating, and then has them debate competitively and educationally against other sentient beings from all over the nation and the world. One of the other things the Lawrence Debate Union does to bring discussion, issues, and discourse to our community and the world is to bring you Flashpoint. Yes, you can see Flashpoint on Vermont Community Access Media, which is Channel 15 on some cable systems. You can also see it on Burlington Telecom. It's also available on the University of Vermont channel, but you can also see editions of Flashpoint on demand. Just go to our website, which is debate.uvm.edu. Click on the Flashpoint icon, and it will take you to a place where there will be an unbelievable wealth of Flashpoint episodes for you to download, to watch on your computer, or to watch on your iPod during that oh so boring commute you have to face. You're probably not facing that commute in Burlington, but we're serving the world as well. My name is Alfred C. Snider. I'm the Edmund W. Lawrence Professor of Forensics at the University of Vermont, the Director of the Lawrence Debate Union. I'll also be your facilitator for this risky program. Let's meet our panelists for this program, which, of course, our panelists always consist of debaters at the University of Vermont. And here on my right, we have Sam Ricker, who's a first-year student. And where you come from again?
Vershire, Vermont.
Vershire. Okay. And how do you spell that?
Vershire.
You can do it. All right, cool. All right, and you're a first-year debater,
yeah.
And so there's a long, strange trip ahead of you in your debate career, and I look forward to traversing that terrain with you.
I'm excited.
Okay, and second time on Flashpoint, right?
Yeah, I'm not shaking anymore.
Okay, so you won't mind that trick that we play on second timers at minute 21? Well, the timer's here. You can watch for it. That's it. Let's meet our other Flashpoint panelists. On my left, we have Jake Meany from California. He's a senior. He's just about to graduate. And what a long, strange trip it's going to be with Sam, and what a long, strange trip it's been with you as well, Jake. I guess it's a little different since I remember when you were born and remember you growing up, and you're actually a second-generation debater of mine.
That's true.
How sweet.
Yep, I coached your father, and don't ask me to say who's the better debater. I'll tell you in private.
It's cool. I'm the prettiest, so it works out.
So you take what you can get. Congratulations on being fifth in the nation at U.S. University's Debate National Championship.
Thank you.
And was that a tough competition?
Yes, it was. It was really difficult. There were a lot of really high caliber teams that were there that had a lot of experience, and it was great though. I wanted to hit the best teams in the country, and I did. Okay. I was happy about it.
All right. And you were number 5. Well, we'll try to get all the way up next, and thanks for your leadership in this area.
Thank you.
Next to me, on my left, I have Joe Torda, who's a junior at the University of Vermont. What's your major?
I have double major in both English and political science.
How do those two go together?
I don't know. Critical literary analysis.
Well, I mean, isn't there a psychoanalytic theory course in the poli-sci department now?
I believe there is.
So, I guess it's all coming together, and as far as I'm concerned, these barriers between disciplines could just be knocked right down. You seem interested in debate. Why?
It's really, I don't know, it's very appealing to me because it teaches me how to form coherent arguments and use them against unsuspecting victims, which, well, it's a fun skill to have.
Okay, great. Well, gentlemen, it's glad to have you here for Flashpoint show number 340. I just remembered that it seemed like 300 was just the other day, and before you know it, we're going to be at 400, but in order to get to 400, we got to get through 340 first. Iran, deal or no deal? We're at a very interesting point now in the long and strange history of U.S.-Iranian relations and the relations between the Iranian nation and the world. We tend to forget a little bit about the past and the way the Western powers have interfered in Iran before, and now we have Iran deciding to interfere a little bit with the Western powers. So I guess what comes around goes around. It's been in the news a lot. So let's get at it. Some background. Iran is the descendant of the original ancient Persian Empire. It's basically the same place. And before we go any further, do you think it was just random that this movie 300 came out, where 300 handsome, violent Westerners hold off the throngs of evil Persians who are trying to destroy our way of life?
Well,
I mean, there was a lot of criticism of that movie. What do you think?
I mean, to be honest, I think the release may have possibly been strategic, but if you've seen the film, there's, I don't know, I saw very little connection to what's happening now politically. It was just sort of a bloodbath that was shot very artfully. Yeah. Whereas what's happening now could be classified as a bloodbath, although it's not very artfully depicted.
And it's not all that bloody yet.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to get that out. Now, following World War I, the Western powers drew new borders all across the Middle East, and they drew them based on spheres of influence they wanted to have and on where they thought the oil was, because it was clear that that was going to be very important for industrial development. And one of the nations that was sort of hewn out of this was Iran. And a lot of times we forget that at one point Iran had a democratic, popularly elected government, which was basically led by a guy named Jake, and I can't decide. I say Mossadegh, and you say
Mossadegh.
Yeah. So anyway, he was overthrown by the U.S. and replaced with Shah Reza Pahlavi, who became the Shah Emperor of Iran, and he was in power until 1979. How would you characterize his orientation?
Well-dressed homicidal maniac is how I would put. He's like all U.S. installed leaders in that as long as he kept the oil flowing, he could repress rights, he could kill, he could really, there were no rights and people were getting killed every day. And I think that's why the Islamic Revolution, which happened in 1979, which even though Iran is rich in resources, it was still going through an economic disaster during the 70s because the Shah was only spending money on himself, which allowed people to support what happened with the 1979 revolution and then the hostage crisis that emerged after that. All that was able to happen because of
and we shouldn't be surprised at the hostage crisis because they're overthrowing a U.S.-backed dictator. So I mean, I'm not in favor of hostage taking, but I can understand why they would take hostages from the embassy. Once again, I'm not in favor of it, but I understand it because there was a lot of pent-up resentment. And that was, fueled quite effectively by Ayatollah Khomeini, who was the supreme leader right after the revolution, and who has now passed away and has been replaced by Ayatollah al-Khamenei. How did I do on that one?
Decent.
Okay. All right. I'm a little trust. And I think I've got this one true. And but he's really the power figure in Iran. He's called the supreme leader. All constitutional power is vested in him. He can dismiss the parliament. He can call for new elections. The budget has to be approved by a council led by him, etc., etc. For example, there were a lot of voters who wanted reforms in Iran, so they elected this guy called Khatami, right? And he was trying to reform much. Nothing much got reformed because the supreme leader wouldn't go for it. Now we have this guy Ahmadinejad, who wants to do a bunch of things and says a bunch of things, but he doesn't really have any power either. So there are, not to say that the supreme leader runs every thing that happens in the government, but the buck pretty much stops with him. But under that, there are a lot of competing different groups. And the current status of Iranian society is one that's quite interesting, demographically for one. They have a tremendous number of really young people.
Yeah, and in fact, there's a lot of evidence and a lot of people just say, wait, for the younger generation. If you look at the younger generation, the people that voted in the current president did not vote him in on any of his foreign policy. His entire platform was based on ending corruption within the system. And that's what got voted in. And in fact, in the recent municipal elections that happened where a lot of his supporters from his political group lost, it's because they haven't carried through on that reform. And I think a lot of the younger generation are more interested in solving the problem. In fact, 40% of the GDP goes to the Ayatollah's group for kickbacks. And that's why the economy is in such disarray right now. So I think, yeah, the younger generation, it's definitely an interesting demographic.
And then there are, groups inside the reformists who would like to follow a more pro-U.S. foreign policy, pro-West foreign policy agenda, regularize trade, liberalize internal controls, have more of a democracy. There are very much the conservatives who want to stay a very conservative religious state with the power strictly controlled mostly by clerics. And then I'm sure, like in a lot of countries, there's a bunch of people in the middle who are just riding the waves of whatever happens. I had the good luck at a scholarly conference recently to meet a professorial colleague from Iran, and he was like, I just want you to know that, I think my president's kind of crazy. And I said, well, I just want you to know I think my president's kind of crazy. And he said, I just want you to know that the people of Iraq don't really support our president's policies. And I said, I want you to know the people of America don't really support the president's policies. So we shook hands and we were like brothers right away. But I couldn't identify who the supreme leader was in my country, and he could. Now, Iran's a lot in the news over their nuclear program. Any comments about that?
Yeah, they've been lying to the UN division, the International Atomic Enforcement Agency, for a long time now about their nuclear policy. They claim it's only for peaceful purposes, but they now have the ability to enrich uranium at the 90% level, which is necessary to make it a weapons grade.
Yeah, which you don't need for power production at all.
Right, but they only have the ability, and it would take at least 10 years, or I think the most crazy people would say about 5 to 7 years before we even see the development of any nuclear weapons. So we don't know. We know they have the capacity to do it at this point.
Well, haven't they got all the tech they need from AQCon and from the North Koreans and the Chinese and?
Unclear. In fact, a recent CIA testimony to a congressional subcommittee says the intelligence is relatively truthful, meaning that it might be true, it might not be true, but we don't really know, so we need to do more. So it's kind of we need to wait and see if this intelligence is true, because it's all coming from exiles who want, of course, to go back in and seize power within the country.
Okay. One of the other issues here is that they have lots of oil. They don't need nuclear power. What do you think about that?
Well, it's been recently published that at best estimates, Iranian oil will last until the year 2015 and will probably run out before that. And since Iran hasn't invested its oil money into other technologies, there's likely going to be a collapse. And currently, they're not meeting their quota set by OPEC. So it's that people may not know about it, but it is the inevitability that Iran will run out of oil soon.
Now, they have oil. They have oil reserves, right? But they don't seem to be able to get at them.
They have old technology. They have Buicks when they need hover cars at this point, because they aren't investing their technology, as Sam pointed out so aptly, in anything besides kind of keeping the infrastructure just floating. And they're just selling it off at low prices, and that's really hurting their ability to build any sort of domestic markets, to build any sort of international markets, and at that point, they just aren't able to tap into these current reserves.
Right, and they don't really have the processing capacity either. I understand that they're about to have gasoline rationing in Iran. So do you think that's a plausible reason why they might want to develop nuclear power, because they're going to run out of oil?
Yeah, well, also, nuclear power is in the region. It makes sense to me because, Israel is a nuclear power at this point. Egypt has given information. Saudi Arabia has also said they want to invest in nuclear power for both peaceful and military purposes. So it seems to be the wave of tide in the region.